Another example could involve API keys. Your production site might require a live API key for real transactions, but in your staging or local environment, you'd use the test API key to prevent actual purchases from being processed during testing. Hey folks, so just a quick one today. I'm recording a tutorial video that I'll be releasing in a few weeks, but I recently discovered an issue that I wanted to document because it might be helpful for others. So just to give you some background, in this video I need to use the Create Block Theme plugin so that I can save my templates back to my theme, and particularly images. However, last week I had a crash on my local machine, which meant I needed to reinstall MySQL, PHP, and set up all of my configuration again. And unfortunately, I lost some of that configuration that I rely on locally, and while I thought I'd restored everything, I just discovered this morning that there's another issue. So even though I can serve my local sites over HTTPS, the Create Block Theme plugin uses cURL requests to handle some of its functionality, which isn't done in the browser. And this is where I discovered my issue. So let me show you what's happening. So I've got a cover block here and I'm trying to add an image. Now with the cover block in my theme, I want to save the image back to my theme folder. And the plugin will do the rest in the background by creating a local reference to the image in a PHP pattern. Now normally I would save it to the database first and then use the Create Block Theme plugin functionality to save those changes to the theme folder as well. So as long as I've got localized images selected, it should save any images I've placed in my template back to my theme folder. When I go through this process though, I found that no image appears in my cover block after it's refreshed the page. So I thought the issue might be in the plugin. So I set up Xdebug with some breakpoints in my local environment to trace the plugin's functions. Then I realized the plugin is actually using WordPress core functions, which made me suspect it's my local environment causing the problem. So let me show you what's happening. So if I go through the process again and add another image to my cover block, then save it back to the database, then use the Create Block Theme plugin to save those changes to my theme. At this point, if everything worked correctly, the plugin should have created an assets folder with an images subfolder where the image file would be saved. And after the page refreshes, the image would be displayed properly in my cover block. Now, if I save these changes with my breakpoints set up in Xdebug, it's going to stop at those points. And we get to the function add media to local. And this is coming from the Create Block Theme plugin, which is supposed to take the media file from my uploads folder and then move it into my theme folder. And this process takes the image URL served over HTTPS to a domain that doesn't exist on the internet. Then the function download URL, which is a core WordPress function, is called, which eventually leads to the WP safe remote get function. And this is where the issue arises. When it tries to retrieve the remote URL, it makes a request, which then attempts to verify the SSL certificate. But since the domain isn't publicly accessible, it can't verify the SSL certificate, resulting in an error. Now the error message says, curl error 60, SSL certificate problem, unable to get local issuer certificate. Now I could modify my local configuration files directly to fix this, but it's probably not practical for everyone, and not WordPress related. So, if we let this function run and complete, it fails to get the image. As a result, the image isn't placed in my theme folder, which causes the cover block to appear blank. When we check the theme folder, we can see that the image is missing. There's no assets folder and no images folder. So how can we fix this? WordPress has a constant called WP environment type, which can be set per environment. Now I've set this constant to local in my environment, and you can set this to local, development, staging, or production. And this typically is used in the wp-config.php file to manage different environment types. Obviously in my local environment, I'm not going to use the production setup, and in my production environment, I'm not going to configure it as local. Next, I use another function to check if the constant has been defined and what its value is. Now I've placed this in my functions.php file, but you can also place this in a plugin if that works better for your setup. The function wp-get-environment-type checks if the constant is set to local. If the constant is set to production, or the constant isn't defined at all, the code wouldn't run because the condition wouldn't be met. When the condition is met, I'm applying filter to the HTTPS SSL verify hook, and this filter essentially disables the SSL verification by returning it as false. As a result, any HTTP request sent via WP safe remote get or similar functions won't require SSL certificate verification. Now, if we run this, hopefully everything should just work correctly. If I place an image in my cover block, I can first save it to the database and then use the Create Block Theme plugin to save those changes back to my theme, ensuring that I have the localized images option checked. Remember, I also have Xdebug running, so it will stop at my breakpoints as I debug the process. When I step through the code, it will make the request over HTTPS. By stepping through the logic, I eventually reach the URL request, which in this case uses the WP safe remote get. Unlike before, it doesn't throw an error because my filter on the HTTPS SSL verify hook returns false. This means it bypasses the SSL certificate verification. Now, it's important to note that you should never do this in production or on a live site. Disabling SSL verification on a live environment is highly insecure. This approach is strictly for local development, which is why I've used the WP environment type constant and set it to local. Now, when I check the response, it sends back a 200 status code, which is a good sign. So at this point, everything should work as expected. I check where the code stopped at the breakpoints and let Xdebug complete the logic. The image is now rendered and should be coming directly from my theme. To confirm this, I'll check my theme folder, and yes, we have an assets folder with an images folder, and there is my image. Awesome. And that's how I fixed the issue without delving into complex local PHP or SSL certificate configuration. Now, this is just one use case that I needed for my specific setup. However, there are many ways you can use this method. For instance, if you manage a website with multiple users and you need to test outgoing emails, you might want those emails not to be sent to real users on a staging or local environment. So you could check the environment type and then use the WP mail filter hook to change where any outgoing emails are sent. Another example could involve API keys. Your production site might require a live API key for real transactions, but in your staging or local environment, you'd use the test API key to prevent actual purchases from being processed during testing. If you've used this method, I'd love to hear how you've applied it, or if you have any questions about using this approach, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help. If you found this approach useful, please give this video a thumbs up, and why not consider subscribing for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.